Thank you for coming to the 2024 Southborough Candidates Night, hosted by the Southborough Library Board of Trustees, of which I am one, Janet Maney. I'd like to introduce the other trustees who are in attendance tonight. David Eckberg, who is actually running for his position again. Marguerite, who is now on every committee in town. She's on the select board as well as being our chair. And the others, the other members who are Jane Davis, Amy Isdani, and Kim Reagan couldn't make it tonight. Kim Reagan actually has pulled an Irish goodbye. This is her last month. She's not running for re-election next month. And Mary Tinty, who also was not able to come tonight, is running for her position. So I'd also like to recognize, are there any friends of the library here tonight?
I just came up.
Oh, none of the friends? Okay. Yeah, that's sounds weird.
No, there's no friends here. Oh, wait. Hal and Sandy. Sorry, we're pointing you out. They're friends of
Okay, great. Thank you. There are active, a very active fundraising arm of the library, and we rely on their efforts quite a bit. I'd like to also recognize Ryan Donovan, who is our library director. Yay! He's put a lot of effort into coordinating this event and has a few words.
Okay.
More than a few, maybe.
One is just have a few words.
Have to keep putting in the same. Sorry, I did make a mess. I'm sorry.
But I didn't want to hold on.
I'll probably be messing with the mics all night, so sorry guys in advance. So thank you all for coming. We are holding the event here only because traditionally this is one of the biggest events that the library does every year, and then also for people who have been in the past, they know that space is sometimes an issue. So there is just a single race that we're doing tonight, and I'm looking in the audience, and while I'm glad everybody came, this would have been one of those nights where space probably wouldn't have been an issue, but I will say I'm grateful to the facilities department because they helped us set up the furniture and they're gonna help us break it down. So a big thank you to them, big thank you to Janet for moderating tonight's event. We'd like to thank Terry from Southborough Access Media, who's going to be recording the event tonight. For all those empty seats, you know, and people at home, shame on you for not coming, but at least they'll get to watch from home, which is great. And thank all of you. You should give yourself a round of applause for coming tonight and being civically engaged in your town. That is also very important, so finally, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Southborough Library, and our president, Beth Mello, actually just walked in, so I'll say thank you to her. The Friends did pledge to support this event. I'll also thank Wegmans Food Markets because they donated $125 to this event when we only asked for $100. So there's plenty of delicious cannoli chips and sandwiches in the back. The more you eat, the less we have to take away. So that helps me when you think about it. So thank you.
So looking at this crowd, you probably know, but the town election will be held on May 14th, 6:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Trotter School Gymnasium. The last day to request mail-in ballots is May 7th, which you can do online at the website, the town website, or in person at the town clerk's office. So we only have one contested race tonight with two candidates. There's actually a contested race for the Northborough positions on the regional school committee, but we did not invite them here. But you do actually get a chance to vote for them on your ballot. First I'd like to just introduce the people who are here for uncontested races, or had planned to be here anyway. David Eckberg I had already introduced. He's a member of the Board of Trustees. He was not here. Kathleen Harrigan, has been on and is running for another seat on the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee. Jennifer Premack, She here? People intending them. Alan Zulik. There we go. Thank you for coming. And then we have Andrew Dennington and Joseph Palmer, who are the ones running for positions on the select board. So each candidate is invited to give a 3-minute introductory statement, and then the candidates will take questions. So each question will be answered by both candidates. So keep it fair. Joe and Andrew, you want to come up? We'll go alphabetically, so Andrew is up first.
Okay. Can we close that shade over there, by chance? Yeah, a little bit in my eyes, but it's going to... I feel like I'm in the position here.
Actually, I couldn't have said that better.
All right, would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
So thanks for everyone for coming, and it's great to see so many people here. I'm Andrew Dennington. I'm the current chair of the select board, and I'm completing my first 3-year term, and I'm asking for your vote on May 14th to continue serving on the board into a second term. And I think the key reason why, as I confronted the decision at the end of last year whether to seek another term, is I think that we're coming to a point where we've got some key opportunities to make progress on some pretty important issues, and I think that the town could benefit from some continuity on the select board. I know that in my 3 years on the board, there's been some significant change. We have a relatively new police chief. We're going to have a new fire chief who's, we're just working on his contract this week, and he should be signing that contract on Tuesday. We have a fairly new DPW superintendent. So it's an important function of a select board member to develop good relationships with the key department heads. For all those people, I was involved in the selection process to bring them on board, and I want to continue building upon the relationships that I've already started to work on with them. We also could benefit from some real focus and follow through to make continued progress on several key areas, which hopefully I'll get a little bit of time to discuss. But before doing that, I just wanted to, I know many of you here, but I'll just kind of introduce or reintroduce myself. So I am from this area, originally from Acton, and my wife and I moved here in 2013. And since then, we now have 2 kids, Anne, who is about to turn 9 years old, and she goes to school at Woodward, and Francis, who's a kindergartner, 6 years old at Finn. And my day trade is I'm a lawyer, and I have been working for 18 years at the same firm in Boston. And shortly after I moved to town, I was interested in volunteering for a board or committee, and then I really quickly got into it. So I've now served a total of 10 years on boards and committees. I served on the ZBA for 5 years, and I was a chair for 2 years. Served 2 years on the advisory committee, which is a very valuable experience because it's our finance committee, and you get a detailed understanding of how each of our departments operates. And so now I've been on the select board for 3 years, and the last year I've been chair. So signing up for the select board, one thing you might not appreciate is by signing up for the select board, you involuntarily volunteer yourself for other committees. So I've also served on SHOPSI, which is the Housing Opportunity Partnership Committee. I served on the working group, which put together what is now known as the Southborough Heritage Park. And I currently serve on the Tricentennial Committee, which is something I'm very excited about. So I think the key areas where I feel like we made some progress, but we need some continued focus are, one, in terms of schools, schools is not the really primary responsibility of the select board, but the decision that we'll make about the Neary building project next fall is very important, And I see our role as the select board as supporting the very strong Neary Building Committee that we have, and also supporting our school committee, and keeping in mind, the fiscal impact that this decision is going to have on all the other issues we face. In terms of public safety, we need to continue supporting our police chief, who I think is doing an excellent job. The main challenge in that department, I think of, is recruitment and retention, and we have a staffing study that's on way right now. The last time we did something like this was quite a long time ago. I feel like I'm in a good position once the results of this come back to think about what's the West Bay to staff what positions. Definitely a long-term challenge for us is affordable housing, and as part of that is also diversity of housing. In other words, not just housing that's detached, large, single-family homes. The average price of a home in Southborough is now $900,000. It's just an amazing number to really reflect on, and that's a challenge for both younger families looking to get into the market and also retired people and seniors that are looking to downsize but also stay in Southborough. So I think we should follow kind of an all options, all of the above approach to dealing with that. There are some 40B projects that make sense. There are some that don't make sense. And another thing that we're in progress right now is streamlining our committee structure so that we can make more effective use of the Community Preservation Act, community housing funds that we have. In terms of taxes, economic development, fiscal stability, the select board and town meeting have done a pretty good job the last couple of years at keeping the year-over-year increase in our town expenses fairly reasonable. But the biggest challenge we face, and this is something I'm not sure we all anticipated pre-COVID, was the commercial tax base is stagnant, going down. This is a very long game. There are some huge headwinds that Metro West communities face in bringing businesses back to Route 9, but we just have to stay at it. And also, I was very happy to work as part of a collaborative effort 3 years ago on the downtown district zoning initiative. That still kind of has some unfulfilled promise, but the idea of that is to promote mixed use housing in downtown, which we'd like to bring some vibrancy back to. I also, just from my own personal experience of supporting aging parents, that we're going to have a growing percentage of our population who are seniors. So, it's exciting that we have this new addition that's about to open shortly in our senior center. We should continue to have that as a focus. And then finally, just a personal interest of mine as, an old history major is finding ways to tell the story of Southborough, celebrating our history, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy serving on the Tricentennial Committee. That's still a long ways out, but it requires a lot of time to plan a big celebration in 2027, but I think of that as a way we can use that as a spur to make some physical improvements to more kind of the west side of downtown, tie it all together in a way that tells a story. And then finally is just promoting and maintaining civility in the way that we function as hold public meetings. I know that's been a challenging issue for all sorts of different boards, school committees, select boards all across the country. And I'm committed to continuing to focus on that. So those are the basic, areas that I'm interested in, that if I was reelected, that I'd like to continue to focus on. And thank you for listening. Happy to answer questions that you have. And ask for your vote on May 14th. And I don't know whether that was 3 minutes or.
I'm going to race through who I am so I can get to why I am actually here, because I think that's far more important, and it's something that really addresses all of us. My name is Joe Palmer, 52. I moved here in 2015. We moved here mainly because at the time it was close to where my wife worked, and we wanted her to be able to get home and be able to spend more time with our kids. And I can tell you since then, I've had one of the best experiences of my life, and I love the people. And I'll tell you that in a minute. But so I grew up in Newton. I went to high school in New Hampshire and Connecticut, and came back and was a double beaver over at Babson College. Went there undergrad and got an MBA there many years later, and I know it's happened. Professional experiences include mostly sales and marketing, a little bit of management in industrial and publishing fields. I did publish several sci-fi fantasy books along the way. I made a living as a private professional investor for years, and I also volunteered in lots of nonprofits. And town government actually is a little bit like a lot of the nonprofits, a lot of family dysfunction. But you all have a common purpose, and so you work together and get along. My two kids went through the Southborough schools, and I have a great respect for the teachers there. Now one's in Trotter and one's in Algonquin. And I think that that has been a wonderful way that we learned and grew and got to know the community. And I think something that's underrepresented in our voting base is generally, parents, partly because they're just so busy and they're time pressed, and they need to be addressed in a different manner. And I'll get to that in a minute. So when we moved to Southborough, I was mainly an at-home parent at the time, and I found that I had time to get involved. And what got me involved was what happened at the Barnett House, where $950,000 went for historical restriction. And I thought that that was an improper use of government funds. It gave a rich man a lot of money to restore it. It was nice, it looks beautiful over there. But we were spending money on a property that wasn't ours and giving it a lot of money to somebody that didn't really need it. And there was other ways to address that problem. And so that got me involved. And some of the people in this room I served with on Capitol. Some of the people in this room helped to get me on Capitol, which I very much appreciate. And I have really appreciated some of the people on the select board I've served with over the past bunch of years, and many of them have deeper experiences and minds in this town than I do, and I learned an awful lot from them, and I have a lot of respect for everybody that serves on the select board. There's so much time that goes into it, and I've been telling people that, I look at this job like jumping on a cactus, because I don't necessarily really want it, but my reasons for being here are so strong. And mainly, that is because of my friends in this town and the family that I have in this town. And I don't mean related family, I mean family that lives right around me. When I came to this town in 2015, we got here, we were on a dual driveway with the Whitemans, and we felt like we were adopted over there by the families there. And a year later, when I needed to get back surgery in Utah, they came and plowed my driveway. They were always there for my family. And when, in recent times, when I talk to friends and family in this area, I use family loosely, they all were concerned about a lot of the same things that I was concerned about. And to a certain extent, some of them felt very detached from the way that the governance is done in this town. They felt like they weren't necessarily being listened to. They didn't know what was going on. When I talked to people, they didn't know about Hopkinton Water Project. They didn't know about the MBTA. They didn't know about all these issues that are first and foremost, and some of the Andrews talked about and that the select board talks a lot about. But they didn't know anything about it. And that's something that is a big problem in this town. We need a communication plan. We need to make a voting plan so that we get people involved. We are not getting the best decisions, and we're having problems getting things through because we're not getting the work done beforehand. We need to have direct lines of communication between all the citizens of this town. If you go to the schools, I get a text when there's a late bus. Do I get a text when the select board meeting gets rescheduled? No. Do I get a text knowing when they're going to do a project next to me? No. Although that's being addressed by the DPW. We need to have a sea change in the way that we do this so that we can have better decisions and be more confident in the directions that we move. Because I'm not confident in moving in some of the directions that the town has been moving. I've been very foremost and upfront about the fact that I think we should be fighting the MBTA Act. I don't think we should be succumbing to it. There are other towns that are fighting it, or at least addressing that. I know that in this town we are 30% owned by the state, more than 30% actually. And if it's not the state, we have nonprofits. We can't afford to have high-density housing zoning dropped onto a town with no sewer, with limited water, with Hopkinton Water Project going through, which we don't know how that's going to affect the water grid as it is. We're in the middle of school discussions, and we don't know how that's going to be affected by 300 units of 40B necessarily, or the zoning act if you actually let it go through and we actually give the land to the state. Because once we give that zoning to the state, make no mistake, we don't get it back. And they can pretty much force whatever they want upon us after that. They have changed that act several times since they put it in. The details of that they have revised more than once. So, you know, we're not in a stable situation to begin with. We came out of COVID, now we have exploding construction costs. That's changed the conversation around building a new school entirely. If we've now doubled our building cost on a school, the opportunity cost of paying for a new school over a rehab school is immense. All the projects we won't be able to get done, all the things we won't be able to get done. Are we 3 minutes? Awesome, thanks. Stop me late.
Do you think it's small enough to not need people to come to a mic?
Yes.
Okay. So, I guess if you have a question, why don't you stand?
It would help though, just Access Media, if you guys could stand like sort of facing the candidates in the center aisle. So if you would get up, yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up. So if I'll demonstrate while I'm still eating my sandwich. but if I have a question like, you know, how did the select boards feel about the library expansion project? I'm going to talk right here and just look at both of them. And then if you have a follow-up question, you can stay here. Okay, so yeah, it'll be the back of your head. We'll see in the video, but we'll pick up the audio of your question a lot better for the recording. So thank you.
Questions?
Since Ryan's here,
Oh,
could
Ryan.
you talk about the expansion of the library?
Sure. So this is something that is really just kind of in an embryonic stage. I know that the last time we gave some initial seed funding for some of the studies that are a predicate to expanding the library. You know, we have kind of a patchwork library where it's an older building and put onto a new building that had some flooding problems, which now have been alleviated, which is great. I think that it's something that probably, if it happens, would certainly have to happen, you know, we're looking at like a 5, 6, 7 year horizon on that probably, but I mean, I think it's something that's very important in terms of promoting community spaces. I know just the other day, sorry to make you, I don't know if it makes you jealous or anything, Brian, but I was in the Ashland Public Library just spending some time there, and they have a very nice display about, they did a renovation in 2005, and it tells the whole story about it. I mean, it's a lot of work that goes into it, but that's something, the Neary School building project, that's something that's in a much farther stage right now, but certainly we should keep pursuing some of the initial seed funding to keep this going. And I also know that, you know, one of the things which is kind of in the works is if the Neary building project results in a consolidation from 3 schools into 2, then that opens up an opportunity for the Finn School to become a community center, which may also have some library annex space, which could then open up maybe the possibilities of some other ways of using the current library.
So you're for it?
Well, it's not at a stage where you can say there's no specific proposal about it, yes or not. So obviously one of the key considerations is, right, how much does it cost? How much of it would be matched by state money, and how much would be a contribution by the Southborough taxpayers? Without that type of information, it's really hard to say I'm for it or against it.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to provide some information as best I can about the stage which this is in. And I definitely think that it's something we should continue to pursue. There's no reason not to foreclose something like this.
Joe?
Wow, it's a whole can of worms. And for reasons that I'll let you know, and it has nothing to do with Brian and nothing to do with the library, which I support. My children spent a lot of time in that library, and I love the building. In general, yes, I'm for it, but this is about us clearing the financial space to make that possible. I mean, if we overspend on projects like a new school, where the opportunity cost is that we can't do things like that. And so, you know, as we have to prioritize what we want to do. I mean, when the library had the roof redone and it went through town meeting, this was one of those circumstances where I'm talking about where the communication is, because it came in with only one proposal that put a historical restriction on a part of the library in order to get the roof done because people wanted to use CPC funds. Well, I don't know what that restriction is going to cost us when we go to expand the library. As a community, we should have had the option of both at town meeting so that we could have had that discussion. But because there was only one with a CPC restriction on it, the moderator refused to allow us to have the conversation. And so now we have that restriction on the library, and I don't know how much extra that's going to cost us to do. But when we're looking at these projects and looking at the way we're spending money and logically looking at these projects long term, we need to evaluate those types of circumstances. If we're going to spend a lot, hemorrhage on a new school and spend $60 to $100 million, when that project comes up and it's 10 million and we're adding to the taxes, you may actually, anybody that said yes now might have a different reaction when they say, oh my God, you know, now we're going to up the taxes even more. I think that we need to be very careful in the choices that we're making, especially right now when we have big balls in the air, very big balls in the air, and big financial consequences to these. And I'm not saying not to go forward and do some of these projects, but we need to do them in a financially responsible way that doesn't handcuff us later. If we want to, everybody always says they want sidewalks. Well, you can't have sidewalks if you're spending all your money on one project and then you don't have any left over, you know, sort of in the tax budget to do this. And we don't have a lot of things falling off the tax budget. I mean, a lot of the costs in this town are labor related and to the schools, and you can't just cut those.
So are you for or against the library?
I already answered that question.
Okay.
I answered it directly.
Just checking.
Yeah. If my time's up, it's up.
It's up.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions? Mr.
I'll let the camera get my best side.
I'll have two best sides.
So the select board in the near future is going to have to make a decision and a recommendation to town meeting about regional dispatch, whether to join a regional dispatch system or to keep our existing dispatch system. How are you going to go about making that decision?
Go ahead. I would love listening to you first. I think it's
Sure.
Take turns.
Well, Al, I know you're very familiar with this. You and Sam are our point team and gathering information on the RECs, Regional Emergency Communication Centers that are out there. I see kind of the decision tree as first. We're going to get back the staffing study that's going to have some information about what would be the cost of getting the dispatch staffing up to the level that would really be adequate. If we were to a full year, we took this kind of half measure at the last town meeting. Getting that piece of information, and then if we feel like after having that piece of information we should go in the direction of regionalization, now having been, this is an issue that spanned the last part of the last part of my first year on the board, and is now continuing to this year. I think it's time to kind of make a decision, and we can't be too hung up on the perfection of which would be the correct rec to join. I know that we did previously sign a intermunicipal agreement to join the Metro West rec, which would be based in Westborough, but then there was an issue about the site, right? That it was an formerly environmentally contaminated site. Now the Metro West rec has a different site, which doesn't have the same issue. So that's the one that I am most interested in. And there's still, that rec has not hired an executive director yet. I think that's the key issue, and I'd like to have Southborough have a participation in helping to select the executive director. I know there's other options out there like Holbrook, where Sudbury, has just basically given its dispatch functions to Holbrook. I mean, the one issue I have with that is it's a little bit conceptually hard for me, and I think for a lot of people to get your mind around. We're going to have regional dispatch with a town that's not contiguous to us and doesn't necessarily have the same as your mutual aid partners for fire. So really, I think for me, the thing I'm most interested in, but certainly it's finding out what's involved in possibly rejoining Metro West Rec. And then the other option probably is Holbrook.
First, I'd like to thank any man that hasn't run out the door to go watch the draft.
I think it's on at 8, right?
Yeah, it's coming, who knows? But
We'll get done by 8. Yeah.
I think that I look at this issue very differently, and so do a lot of the people that I'm friends with and I talk to, because I don't look at this just as an analytical and numbers sense. This is a very human issue for me. I grew up in an age where my dad told me, hey, if something's wrong, go run in the police station. Or, my sister, go drive to it and run in if there's something wrong. There's always somebody there. We switched to regional dispatch. If we go dry, what plan is there that when somebody goes in the door that they can be helped, and not just a phone on the wall and an emergency room to jump into? Right now, my neighbor brought up to me that there are 3 years of subsidies. We don't really know what's going to happen after that. You're running on faith that the synergy will create cost savings. We put all that money in the public safety building to have a call center. We probably could have saved a couple $1 million if we'd been looking ahead and said, well, we're going to go regional. So that equipment's there now, and it's good for a while, and I don't think there's any rush to make a decision to jump in there without everybody really understanding how they feel about the human cost. That's what's going to happen. When you call up that dispatch center right now, they know people, they know this area, and they said this at one of the town meetings, and it's true. And when you go to regional dispatch, that may not be the case at all. And there is a cost to that. I just want to know that everybody in the town is comfortable with the decision we make, and I don't think it should be just one option brought to a town meeting. I think there should be several options of varying types so that the people can have a clear idea of what appeals to them, not just what one path to go down. And this is about not just that decision, but a lot of the decisions that we make. I feel that, like with the library roof, we should be offered a slate to make decisions on a broader base than what we're making them right now, because there's a lot more diversity in this community and opinions than one option.
Can we just continue? I think this is a good topic.
Well, I don't see a line of people wanting
Okay.
to ask questions, so.
Sure. Is there a question over there?
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to just add a
You
footnote.
need to come up.
Yeah. Sorry, you're just too far away for the mic you are. I'd just like to add a footnote to what you were just saying, that there are so many topics.
We're trying to actually assess 2 people for an elected position. I think we should be listening to, if you have a question for them, that would be great.
Yes,
Okay.
it just speaks directly to what they were just talking about. I actually have a bunch of different points on different topics, so I don't know if you want me to just cover them all at once and you can take notes and comment, or,
If you have a question for them, that would be great.
okay. I was wondering, well, let me go back to your point on town meeting. It goes by so fast, there's so little time for public comment, and then oftentimes people, your average voter is working so hard, they just cannot come to Board of Selectmen meetings, and they're catching up for your minutes. But everything you have said to me tonight has totally resonated, so kudos, thank you.
And your
I'm
question?
wondering with regard to Mr. Purple and Town Council, if you would be willing to bid out those contracts for change, if not for just a sense of the market. And also, I'm wondering if you were aware of the fact that the town of Southborough was just admonished by the state
Admonished by the state
for withholding public records. And it's not the first time, by the way.
No, I'm chuckling because I can't speak to that. I don't.
It's a
that's not my
transparency
wheelhouse.
issue that is a
yeah.
common thread through Board of Selectmen meetings, and it's
I think I understand.
lawsuits, it's
I think I can
town
speak.
meeting.
I think I can speak to your issue by responding in the fact that, in talking to many of my friends that pushed me to run for office, one of their main issues was trust.
Right.
And I think that when I boiled that down, that really related down to the way that our town government is communicating with citizens. And it's not that we all have to agree at the end of the day, because we don't, and that's clear, and that's fine, But by communicating, one, nobody feels left out. when you get to town meeting, it's really that you didn't brush up on your way along. And so, it's nobody's fault. But by sitting back and being reactive rather than proactive and communicating, this is the cost that we're suffering. And I don't think that it has to be that way. I mean, there are other towns that do it so much better than we do. And some of that's resources, but some of that's just the fact that they caught up earlier and made plans because people felt that way and knew it had to be different.
It just seems that in recent years,
Excuse me, Andrew needs a chance
Oh,
to
sorry, go ahead.
respond.
Yeah, so I don't agree that most people would find that town meeting goes by really fast and there's not an opportunity for comment. I think probably really more the opposite is true, that particularly talking to people from my age, why don't you go to town meeting? Well, because it begins at 10 o'clock in the morning and it goes till 11 o'clock at night. So I think that if anything, we should, in order to kind of strengthen, the vibrancy of the whole system, we need to have, a moderator that really kind of controls the discussion and, not multi-part questions that really become an opportunity for, speeches. And also, to Joe's point about, for example, with the, CPA projects he was talking about, the idea of coming to, town meeting and presenting a menu of choose from these 4 different options, that's going to lead to an even longer discussion. And I think it's really the select board's responsibility to do some of the homework before to present an article to town meeting where, it makes it clear that there's kind of a simple choice, right? I think most people are looking for the select board to do some of that preparatory work for them. So that's one of the reasons why, for example, we haven't brought any regional dispatch discussion to town meeting yet. We're still working to try to present, and I still like the idea of presenting, one specific proposal. I don't think that other communities are really this is about partnering with other communities. I don't see how they can really partner with us if, they don't have a firm sense of what's going to happen, as a result of a town meeting vote.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to agree with your opposition here a little more because,
Could I just make
Yeah.
one little statement with that? And I think everybody in this room would agree that the town meeting structure is really not good for our
Yes.
town. And that if we could have a day of deliberation and then a week of ballot voting, so everybody still has a chance, to vote, you go to the discussion, you change it the way you want to, and then everybody has that time to vote, because that way the people that can't make it for all that discussion can at least vote. I mean, right now we're getting 2% of the town is making most of the decisions in this town. Does that sound like an open, honest discussion to
well,
anybody?
as a citizen taxpayer, I just want the information on both sides. And I can make the decision for myself. I don't want to be lectured to for an hour. So I think the last time I felt like I had both sides presented of an issue, any issue, I'm kind of a process person, was when John Wilson was moderating. That's the last time.
Is there a question?
Is there a question?
Really,
Well,
unless-
it really
I think there
boils
was a
down
question.
to,
We answered it.
for me, I'm hoping that there would be unfortunately, I say this with respect, there's been a lack of respect, consideration, incorporation of public opinion and ideas, and especially opposing opinion. There's been to me, a degrading of civic involvement because there's not a respect for opposing opinion. So I guess my question is, hopefully you would be more open to listening to the public when they have differing ideas on how to spend money. You made some very lucid remarks about looking at our fiscal situation from 30,000 feet. I'm a process person. I look at costs heavily. MBTA Act, totally with you on that. Milton is out front, Holden.
Again, we're
Upton.
trying to get the candidates' opinions on things.
Yes.
So if you could ask a question and then
Well,
give someone else a turn.
the use of proxies and liaisons, I vehemently object to, with St. Mark's and with Hopkinton. I like John Butler. I don't know if he's here tonight, but he's a smart guy, but he's not on any committee. He wasn't elected. He wasn't voted in. And he's a committee of one.
Okay, last time, do you have a question?
My question is are you in favor of using liaisons who do not keep minutes. We don't know who they're meeting with, and we don't know what deal terms they're offering and committing us as taxpayers to, for instance, on many items, but including Hopkinton and the regionalization, which I don't agree with.
Who's first? You want me to? I'll go first.
Go for it.
Yeah, I do. I very much understand your point. And you know, in learning from many of the deeper minds in this room who helped suffer through some of my early times, you know, meeting laws make it very difficult to do certain things. I'm not big in favor of using proxies without public reports.
Right. Minutes, they call.
Yeah, and wasn't it Mr. Healy that you know gotten after because he was talking with St. Mark's and trying to deliberate a better deal from them. And to some degree, we need to have some better reporting, but we also have to have some trust. And you know, when a lot of the people that came to me and said, you know, why don't you run? We trust you. You know, I said you have to keep me honest, because the reality is that there are some situations where a proxy or an individual is a better emissary. And so, you know, I think that, you know, there has to be enough trust, but there has to be enough communication. It's a hard balance, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, because I've been in situations where that happens. I've been with so many people in this room where I disagree, but I trust them in the sense that they're trying to do good. So I think, yeah, this is just so hard. It really is. It's a very hard topic.
You know, it's hard to address this without being
I think
granular,
that
but
we should be entitled to the opportunity to respond to your question, your
Yes.
two questions.
I'm listening.
So I think the general gist of your question is you think that it's inappropriate for sometimes elected officials enlist the help of someone who's smart and effective, but who's not elected to help in negotiating things, okay? And one, there's no requirement that someone who is negotiating with someone about a potential law or project has to keep detailed minutes of all that. The requirement of keeping minutes is for meetings where there's a quorum of a board or committee there. So I think actually the two things that you brought up, Mr. Healy's negotiations with the private schools about donations actually is an example of where that approach worked. And in fiscal year 2019, for example, the total private school donations we had from the 4 private schools we had in town were 164,000. And then in fiscal year 2023, we're up to 262,000.
Not referring
So-
to that at all.
No, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm just as a point of contrast, I think the criticism that you're making misses the mark. And then to the point about the work that John Butler, our very respected former chair of the advisory committee, has done in negotiating the terms of it hasn't been approved yet, of arrangement where we would help Hopkinton because their water is contaminated and they were looking for a connection through Southborough to get MWRA water, that in exchange for helping them with that, we have a series of permanent improvements to Southborough's water system, plus $1 million of commitment to fund completely unrelated water improvements in Southborough. So
Not
that's
our
a good
business,
deal.
not our problem.
That's a good deal. So I think your criticism of you don't have a detailed minutes of a record of exactly everything that was said between
No,
this
you're
person
putting
and that
words in my
person.
mouth, and that's not
Yeah.
correct.
It is no longer your turn.
Okay, thank you.
And I have, did you leave?
But I would like to say that it's hard to get, St. Mark's Park, $160,000 of our money was spent before that project was ever introduced to the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
For like not very much work product. So I see you nodding your head. I followed that one closely, and I didn't like the legal contortions, papering the deal after the work was done, spending public taxpayer money on private land. So, and to have that morph into a library expansion, the questions about a human burial ground, I mean, it was all very disturbing, and it wasn't fully vetted in detail, in public. So, and we're talking about costs here.
Thank you.
The value of the properties were never fully
Other people have questions.
disclosed and
Yeah.
were never fully disclosed and discussed as part of the deal. All I'm saying is the taxpayers, Mr. Palmer, are smart enough to understand the math. Okay? I've been in real estate for 35 years, commercial real estate. I know that the value of those parcels isn't $1. And I also know that according to Chapter 30B, a swap is not authorized in Massachusetts.
Thank you.
I know, but
There,
we'll, yeah, we need to move
we're
on.
gonna move on.
I know it's granular, but these are important facts.
You've had
Yeah,
your
thank
chance.
you.
You've had your opportunity. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, I'm going to be out of here soon because I have stress. So I was recently appointed to Shopee a few months ago, and in the short time I've been there, I'm not going to profess to know everything about affordable housing, but a couple of things have become clear. One was, Palmer, you mentioned...
Can you speak a little louder? Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, you mentioned you were against the MBTA law, which I understand, but it seems to me the main point of that law was to create more housing and more affordable housing, which I think anyone who's paying attention would agree is necessary, not just in Southborough, but all of the state and indeed the country. The other night, we were discussing an opportunity to acquire a parcel on Northborough Road. There are hurdles, it's going to cost some money. So I guess my basic question is, what would your approach be to affordable housing? You know, how much are you willing to invest in it? Do you think it's a big problem? Can you talk about your approach to affordable housing?
Okay, well, first, on the MBTA communities, that's not so much about affordable housing because the law requires you to zone for denser housing, multifamily housing, and you can only have a 10% affordable requirement, and that's so that it's actually more beneficial for to actually get projects built. And I don't think that it's productive to take that. It's easy to say I'm against MBTA communities, but I actually had an interesting discussion with someone recently, in the area that would be impacted by Park Central, and certainly an area where the people are very concerned about, denser housing. Actually, I think that if you're if you're concerned about the MBTA Communities Act, I think the basic contours of the proposal that the planning board has put together, and that I understand Northborough at its town meeting recently approved its MBTA communities law, is basically, putting the zoning areas in some areas where if there's something that's going to be built, it's probably not going to be built for some time. That makes sense because we don't want to have this enormous surge of new growth right after we build a school, which is, sized for a certain group. But I can tell you about some of the things that, did Paul already leave? Okay, there you go, yeah. Where we've taken a whack at it and we haven't been successful yet. One is the kind of like hitting singles approach, right? And there was a strategic plan done for how you use the Affordable Housing Trust Fund monies, right? This is money that's in the custody of a committee, which is a 7-person committee, of 5 of which are the select board members, and it recommends, it's probably too ambitious at this point to try to hit the home run of buy some enormous piece of property and then just hope some community housing developer comes in and assumes all the costs, right? If there are some smaller parcels in town that we can look to where we could repurpose them. I know there was one particular property that we had very much in mind that was just maybe 2 blocks up there that we thought was a great opportunity, and we weren't able to get it done. I think in part because our structure is too complicated. We have right now like 3 or 4 different boards that touch on this subject, and right now we're trying to get it down to at least only like 3. So I think that'll start to help. But and I also think that You know, there are 40Bs, right? You don't get the affordable housing is not as affordable, but it still promotes the diversity of housing. So for example, Madison Place hasn't really added that much to the school impacts, but there's also, it's an opportunity for people who are seeking to downsize can, you know, move into an apartment and stay in Southborough. So, I mean, there are 3 pending 40B projects in town right now. I mean, one of them seems to clearly have the least impact on neighborhoods, roads, things like that. So that's, I think, you know, the select board is hoping that we can see some progress on that. So I'm sorry that there's not like a silver bullet answer to your question, and that it's a lot of just kind of process, but it's an example of where I think we have made some progress, and we should continue to have a continued focus on that so we can bring it to the finish line.
A lot of what Andrew said, actually, I do agree with. The MBTA Act is not about affordable housing. You have to apply to require affordable housing in those properties. If you want to make the best of that world, you would buy units from developers that are developing in that property, not trying to build additional properties with the money you have. If you're going to try and build properties with the affordable funds that you have, you're going to end up spending more money than you would likely spend just going out and buying current units in the market. Because by the time you end up building, especially as a public entity, there are lots of problems, which is what we looked at when we were looking at 21 Highland on the 21 Highland Committee. I would tell you this: if you want affordable housing, go out and buy it. If you want affordable housing, go buy it from the people that are already developing. They'll sell you units, and those can be guaranteed. You're not going to get it by trying to force it on the MBTA Act. And the MBTA Act, let's be honest about this. It's being mostly, the only forced requirement of this is in some of the most affordable neighborhoods in town already. And you demolish some of those to build some of those other units. So you'd be losing some of the more affordable units in this town for them to build things that don't have to be affordable. We have no infrastructure for it. If you're a conspiracy theorist and you look 20 years down the line the way I am, the state can only require this town to put in different types of infrastructure for those buildings that they want in those places. And people read it differently, and people told me I'm wrong. But when I read it, and I talked to some other people that read it, that's the way we read it. If you're putting the Hopkinton Water Project through, what's the first thing the state's going to say? Where's the nearest sewage treatment plant or area to put one in? It's in Hopkinton. If you bury a line with that preemptively in thinking that way, you've all of a sudden opened up that for 15 units per acre. So, you know, let's be looking at these things in a whole general holistic way, not in a specific way. And let's face it, you know, where are they trying to do with the rest of those MBTA Act units? They're trying to stuff them into weird places where they don't think anybody will build. Do you think the state's going to accept that? The state has to pass the state. And the state's going to look at these weird maps that we're trying to put out, and there's a good chance they're going to reject it and throw it right back into our face and say you need to do different than what you're trying to do. So we're trying to outsmart it at the moment. And I don't think that that's going to end up being that effective. I think what's going to be more effective is trying to bind with other towns, have an attrition process where we at least get the right to negotiate. Because we aren't getting enough from the state for the assets they already own. And they could permit assets they already own in town to build these, you know, high density housing properties. They don't need extra space in our town to do it.
So if we want to wrap up at 8 o'clock, does anybody have a last question? You do, yes.
We have one tax rate in town,
You know what,
and
everybody should be saying their name before they...
Tim, we have one tax rate in town, and it's for both commercial. It's for both commercial and residential properties. Post-COVID, we have a deficit of commercial properties in town, or businesses in commercial settings. What is your plan to help attract more commercial properties to town, or would you rather not? And how would you see that helping the overall tax rate within the town for everyday taxpayer?
I'll go first. If you want affordable housing, try and get them to convert some of the properties that are vacant, for one. But what I understand about some of the problems we have attracting commercial clients to the town people can differ with this, but part of it was that we don't have a sewer system or waste system to handle some of the types of businesses that would like to do. And we have problems with just restaurants. And the best way to put those conduits in are on state properties. So, if we really want economic development, we're going to have to deal with the state to put sewer lines in, and probably right down Route 9. And we know how difficult it's going to be to shut down Route 9 to put in a sewer system. So I think that we have to be far more creative. If you're looking to attract businesses, we're going to have to be far more creative in the types of. I wouldn't give out tax gifts to get them, because honestly, I think a lot of the buildings out there are going to be converted to client, or will be converted in general, or we should be looking at them to be converted. And if you want affordable housing, that's what I would tell you to do, because those properties are in places where you have traffic infrastructure. You'll have limited septic, but at least you'll have large parking lots to put septic in, like they're doing over at on the end of Parkerville. And you'll have far more acceptance from the people that are living in that area, because those buildings are already there. So you're not building anything necessarily new. They already are used to that infrastructure, and therefore you're going to get far less blowback for trying to do that. That said, we need to communicate with the people around any area that we're going to try and do these things, because what happens is if we don't communicate, we don't effectively get a message across, they don't effectively communicate back, and then these things blow up. And we don't need to have this much blow up about things. At 21 Highland, we were talking about affordability. I knew people around there, and went to talk to them, and they were like, "What? You're talking about what?" And I said, "Yeah, we've been in a committee for almost a year." They had no idea. I mean, this is part of the problem that we're facing here. We could be doing more by being more effective at bringing people together and forming projects that people agree to, rather than having one group going one direction, one group going the other direction. It just doesn't work well.
Yeah, so I know we're now running up to where I think the NFL draft.
It's okay, they're in trade.
I agree with you.
We're
Probably
trading
the long run solutions to bring the most attractive businesses back to Route 9 would be wastewater, and there, something that we should pursue are kind of smaller wastewater treatment plants, rather than there have been some discussions about focusing that on Route 9, but that's really something that's kind of a long shot. We don't have funding lined up for anything like that right now. But one thing I can say is, if you opt out of the MBTA Communities Act, you've disqualified yourselves from a lot of the state grant programs that would actually fund something like that. And I've heard some instances recently of some popular local businesses on Route 9 that are not going to be coming back because of some zoning restrictions on Route 9. So I think there's some other work we can do looking at our zoning laws, and it's something that takes a zoning change. That's something that's going to take 2 years, probably, realistically, 18 months. But that's another thing that we can do. And I thought where your question was going was, do you believe in a split tax rate or a flat tax rate? And on that one, I've always thought I know Sam, I think, has begun to change his vote. So he's often sometimes a leading person where eventually he gets some more votes. But there, I think you split the tax rate and you have such a disproportionately higher tax increase on the businesses, and such a relatively modest tax cut for the residential taxpayers that it doesn't make sense.
We done? Looks like everyone's satisfied. Thank you so much, both of you.